Okay, are you going first or am I going first?
No, you go first, Dev. You break the ice first because I am really nervous.
So blended learning, schools ICT, Washacre, Washacre. I quite like the likes of doing it like that. So as we all went down into lockdown, some schools were using some apps, some provision of actually engaging children through Seesaw, for example, and having that. But some schools they had no idea of what to actually use. Some were sort of doing packs. It was like a mixture of everything. What schools ICT did was look at using Microsoft Teams for our schools. We're an authority that actually provide a lot of the IT support for schools. So we, on the back of that, we actually set up school teams for all of our primary schools. Very much a vertical curve for my skills. Never had been involved in anything like that before, and I'm sure lots of staff will sort of say they've learned sort of so much during this time. During this time, Cherise was using Seesaw and using LBQ, of course, but also then looking at how can we use. Not everybody was using Seesaw in Washacre, and I know that they've got a mixture of. They put a pack together of where they were using Seesaw. Do they use Tapestry down at the bottom end of your school?
Yes, they use it in nursery, but it's something we're looking at to maybe roll out Seesaw so we can use it throughout.
It's very much at the moment, isn't it? There's no sort of you have to. It's all up to schools, of course, as to what they actually used. So that was our sort of initial support, and that's just gone crazy from then. But I know Cherise and I have been in lots of conversations about how their approach was. And I know that you were an absolute keen advocate of Seesaw beforehand, weren't you?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I was really, and Cherise has done lots of training for us on using Seesaw, but actually as well as not only how she uses it to support her subjects, but in particular how she uses it to sort of integrate learning by questions in there as well. Just share some of the real sort of gems that you've told me, and I've gone, wow, I got dead excited. I tend to do that, but I got really excited. Go on, darling, go.
I'm just, like I said, year 6 teacher at Washacre, definitely. I've got a few of my Washacre colleagues on tonight. We've got Ali and Vicky, deputy head, keeping an eye on me and making, I'm sure, stick to the narrative. So we've been using LBQ. We started using it last year. It was our school requires improvement. I'm very happy to say we're no longer requires improvement, and LBQ had a massive part to play in helping us to raise standards across school, especially in maths, and our results were absolutely phenomenal. So when lockdown, and we've started rolling that out across school, and Seesaw is pretty much embedded all the way through school. Now, since lockdown happened, it was like, oh my word, what are we going to do? But we just used what we had and then put bells and whistles on. So it was about using the LBQ alongside Seesaw. Now, I'm not sure if there are other platforms out there. I'm not advocating your Seesaw is definitely the one to use. It's just something that we've already had embedded in our school. And what I loved about Seesaw...
Do you know what they say about shutting her up? You can't. But I think that was something that we had that real discussion about is why reinvent the wheel? If you're already using stuff in school, use what you've got really well. You don't need to go out and suddenly, just because the market is flooded with all these things, it was... Actually, the staff are confident with it. The children accept it and knew how to do it. So it just seemed the natural way for you to sort of build on there, didn't it?
Absolutely, because it was so embedded in our, especially in my year 6 classroom, it was really embedded in our everyday teaching and learning. And with Seesaw, what you're able to do, it is a platform where you can upload activities, but you can also provide that online feedback. I can give verbal feedback, I can give written feedback. The children can give each other feedback, voice comments, written comments. So it isn't just about the children reading something, because that can be quite restrictive as well. So what we kind of did with LBQ once the lockdown tended to happen was we would post the Seesaw, the LBQ posts to the children via Seesaw. So that's how we kind of sent out our code. So we didn't need to do emails or put it on our blog or anything like that. It was and each teacher was then able to give it directly to their classes. So each teacher had their own class. They could then send out the LBQ codes, however many LBQ tasks that we had. And that's what I love about LBQ is I can have 3 tasks running at the same time. But what was amazing through lockdown was the way our teachers all of this is evolved, it's continuously evolving, is that we then started to share the codes with each other. So if I had a child who wasn't necessarily accessing my year 6 curriculum or just needed that bit more support, I could then say to my year 3 colleague, right, can you send me your year 3 codes? And I could send that directly to a specific group of children. Same with the year 5 teacher. My Siri's going bonkers. The year 5 teacher, they could send me their code. So we could have lots of different learning activities going on, but we were able to, send those to the children through our Seesaw platform. So it did work really well alongside LBQ, and it helped us to maintain that teaching presence with our blended learning.
Sorry, did you just use it for the maths? Because I know that was the thing that you sort of, when you first started on LBQ, it's all about maths, wasn't it? To sort of really
absolutely
do that.
not. So I know personally for me, again, like I said, I think all of us have been on a learning journey, haven't we, with this blended learning and what we're supposed to be putting out there for our children. And I've seen a lot of schools have just put links onto the BBC Bite Size and the Oak Academy. But what we did was we looked at the LBQ and we looked at Bite Size and the Oak and what have you, and we did reading and we did science. Now, at the very beginning of our journey, we did just the focus was, let's just go back over what we've already done. Let's not teach the new concepts. Let's just really nail the learning that the children have already done. But of course, then we didn't know how long lockdown was going to be. And now we're starting to develop the teaching side of things. But very much, yes, reading. The reading, what the LBQ have done with reading over lockdown is absolutely amazing. And I cannot recommend this highly enough. Go on and look at the reading resources there. They really do take on board the feedback that the teachers have given us, and they've done longer texts and shorter texts. And just like with the maths activities and the other activities I talked about as well, I can set different levels. I can set a year 1 task reading level. I can set a year 4 reading level. I can set a year 6 reading level. And I can send that code out to a group of children. And same with my science. I've been doing a lot of science because we didn't cover nearly enough science in year 6. So now we're being reinforced doing those concepts, going back over the year 3, the year 4 and the year 5 science to build up on what they're going to do for year 6 to help them get ready for high school, which is that transition. So no, definitely not maths. Absolutely science and reading.
How have you
spelling, the grammar
Sorry to
is
interrupt,
phenomenal.
Sorry to interrupt you, Cherise.
Yeah.
Obviously, this blended learning approach is a lot of LBQ will help with the children, with them being able to answer questions. But there's been a bit of a big push at the moment, or so it seems, from the government, that come September, should there be another isolated lockdown, be it by region, by school, or by postcode, or whatever it's going to be, how do you envisage your school coping with the teaching element of what the government are saying should happen? And this, how do you teach blended learning? What do you do? And Deb, how does your authority help implement what Washacre want to do?
So when we sort of, as I say, when we went down the teams aspect, we concentrated on setting a staff team for all of the schools. So some schools sort of really went with it, and then gradually one of our sort of real sort of flagship schools has been one at St Osmond and Andrews. They just sort of quietly got on with it, and they approached their blended learning through just sort of setting assignments, setting task learning activities for children across school. At first they were going, oh well, we'll just sort of do 5 and 6, and then suddenly their feedback was, actually, we want to do 3 and 4. Well, actually, we want to go whole school and really engage our families. They put a lot of work into actually supporting the families to access this, because that's half the battle. If schools, we're all due to come back in September, but if there's going to be sort of spikes or, where certain classes can't come back, how do we how do we still support those families and children? And by doing a lot of the work now, they've been able to sort of really engage pupils. And up until before half term, there were over 90% engagement across the whole school of families actually accessing online learning content. And it's an area of Bolton where you've got your professional, parents that are sort of get the technology, but then we've got the other end of the spectrum as well. But all of the families, the feedback's been amazing for that school and the support that the schools give. So I think it's a really important partnership that schools not only support the staff with this new learning, because I know from what Cherise was saying, some of the staff were having a real wobble, but actually sort of once they get it, they get really excited about it. And I know sort of more and more schools and now have developed like class teams for schools, and we've made that as safe as possible by taking out certain features. And we keep sort of thinking, we've only 2 more weeks to go. Surely there'll be no schools that sort of want any more teams setting up. And I think I've had 6 emails today. Can we look at setting up teams for September? Because they know that it's a safe environment. They know that everybody can access it and things like that. So that's the sort of thing we're doing to support. We're giving a safe platform for schools to use how they want to use it. We've developed a learning hub that's got loads of videos on there for not only helping staff, because that's, if your staff aren't confident, then they're not going to really engage with it. But if staff can't do it, they've always got somebody else to ask. But if Mrs. Jones's family down the road doesn't know how to do it, she's not got anybody else to ask. So on our learning hub, we've done a whole load of videos of how does your child, hands in an assignment. How does your child just log on? Never mind any hands in an assignment. So there's lots of videos to support families as well. So that was sort of our remit, is to make sure that whoever the end user was actually had support using a safe environment for each children, for each families and for the school as well. So that's the sort of thing we were doing.
Yeah, Deb, that's absolutely fantastic. It sounds like you've almost had to make help videos.
Yeah.
If you take away the school thing and think of you were selling something else, then you've been involved in the making of the help videos to teach the children and the parents in what to do. Sorry, asking back to you, Cherise, another question. What's been the biggest barrier to this blended learning that you found at Washacre?
Devices, parents having access to the internet and devices. That really is our biggest barrier. I think another barrier, and it's kind of like going back to what Deb was saying about the learning journey that we've been on at Washacre. At the beginning of lockdown, the children seemed quite happy to use LBQ, and I will say LBQ was really good because the teacher's no longer there, is there? You can't give that direct support, whereas LBQ, with the little pop-ups that you keep getting, if the children get it wrong, it's giving them support. And that was absolutely brilliant as at the beginning of lockdown. But as it progressed and as it got longer and longer, I found that the children weren't quite as engaged as much anymore. And I think it's because they were missing that teacher presence. And I think that's really important. They needed to hear the teacher's voice. And I started sending my children to the Oak Academy. So I would do an Oak Academy video, send them to that, and then set an LBQ task from whatever they had been taught, say, for example, ratio or coordinates or whatever, and then set them an LBQ task from that. And I found, again, I was losing children. They were dropping off like flies because there was no teacher's voice. And when I did speak to one of the children, said, what was it about that you didn't like? He said, it wasn't you, Mrs. D, which I was quite happy with, really. And he just said, you didn't have that. They didn't have that it was the teacher's presence. They want to hear the teacher's voice, the teacher that they know and love. So then what I started to do was take the LBQ questions and created my own little question set, and I created my own little teaching videos, just as I would do in the classroom. And I popped that onto Seesaw, and then so gave them those teaching videos. They could keep referring back to those teaching videos, and then set them the LBQ tasks. And that seemed to really help the engagement pick up. They've still got the barrier there of, not all children have devices, but once they were hearing me, hearing my South African twang, and the engagement picked up a lot more. And I'm going, if it's all right with you, Pat, can I just pass over to my colleague Ali, because her process, don't look so shocked,
of course you can.
It was brilliant because she almost had the same kind of journey as me, but then adapted her teaching. And she's a year 3 teacher. She's phenomenal. She's our maths lead as well. But Ali, do you want to just explain how your learning journey kind of evolved using, and how you did with your barriers? Unblock your, there we go.
Yes, thanks, Cherise. I've not got the nice South African twang like you've got. I've got the very broad West Orton voice, so I'll try my best. With my class, I did what you did, and I got onto the Oaks National Academy, and the engagement was quite low on that, and I changed it over and I went over to White Rose Maths. Now, in the morning, I would post all of my videos. I'd post the work that I expected them to do. But what I would do in the afternoon is I would set LBQ activities that would reinforce the learning that I did in the morning. So it was a completely seamless day as such. So, for example, today, my children have been looking at prefixes within their English. And then in the afternoon, I had like a big push on prefix work within LBQ. The other thing that I've managed to do with LBQ is the questions that a lot of children have got wrong. I've managed to take a snip of that, added it onto Seesaw, and then I've had children explain the reasoning and the thinking behind it. So that's been brilliant. I mean, it's something that we've implemented before lockdown, but it's been something that has worked well as well since. Is that okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Ali. Another barrier I think
great.
We've had. Sorry, Pat. Another barrier I think we've had with in terms of the lockdown and children accessing all the different resources is time, and having the families all competing with a device or not having enough internet and that kind of thing. And what I really like about LBQ Task is that I could set it first thing in the morning, and I would make it come on. I would make the task last till probably about 8:30. So at any point during the day, when it was free for the children to be able to access it, they could then go on. So it wasn't the traditional of, your school starts at 9 o'clock and finishes at 3:30. And I think that's been quite a big mind shift for us, is that the school day has changed. The school day is going to change for our children, and how we need to help the children with that new school day, is quite important, and set that up for the kids. Natural pause.
Thanks for that. There's been a question from Joe, which I think is a question that has cropped up for lots of schools. So I'm guessing both Deb and yourself will be able to answer this. Is it the devices or is it the Wi-Fi that pose the problem? She's saying that there's a lack of broadband within the families and phone access. And I'm just wondering, with this government announcement of squillions of millions of pounds available, is that something that perhaps Bolton will look to do, is provide the one-to-one devices, perhaps for those families who don't fit the category where they were allowed to have a one-to-one device? So I'm just wondering what Bolton's going to do about that in the future.
I know from the council aspect, to schools ICT, we're actually a managed service within the council. So the council take the overarching approach, and I know that they have had an absolute bank of laptops and routers and equipment to go out to schools. And I know they're in the process of coordinating and contacting schools where devices have been identified that they're needed. And I think schools will be hearing before, because we want to get, they're sat in our storeroom at the moment, and sort of they're on their way out tomorrow. So I know that schools will be getting sort of the phone calls to see, but we've no idea as to how many or where they're going. It's been a council level approach for there. So and it includes not just primaries but the secondary aspect, as the secondary families that have been identified as well. In some of our schools where there's been a real problem of where they want to engage in learning but they can't actually, the device no one might have been proud of, it's just not fit for purpose. Some schools have actually sort of said, look, we can loan you a piece of equipment on the understanding of what it's for. They've signed an agreement and they have to engage in the learning. It's got to be a two-way thing. If it's not, if they're not engaging, they take it back off them. Thankfully, that's never happened. But that's per school. Some schools won't do that, and some schools have said, yeah, we will have a look at it. And I know one school was really concerned, and I think they actually loaned out throughout the whole school just 5 pieces of equipment. So it was a way of a school actually breaking down further barriers because we get the impression that it's not necessarily as much the internet, it's the devices across the families.
Yeah.
I think that's it. If you've got, 2 iPads or 2 devices across, a family of 4 and parents working from home, and you've got the children's learning, that's really hard to juggle. And I think, like Cherise said about having those tasks set at an early day, early throughout the day, they can access it more. That's one way of doing it. Cherise, would you say that you've got?
Absolutely. I mean, I completely think that's the brilliant idea of being able to send out devices if we can do. I mean, I know LBQ, I know I keep plugging LBQ, but we have the LBQ tablets, and they're not very expensive Android tablets. And it's one of those, is it better to give that support to the families and let them have those tablets so that the learning can continue at home, and you just kind of cross your fingers and cross your toes that the tablets will come back in one piece. Another thing we've thought of doing as well is setting up clubs within school. So you can have your lunchtime club, you can have like a nice fun after school club or an early morning club, where you can provide access for those children who are struggling to get onto the internet or home, or who don't have the devices, to then be able to at least have a chance of getting those resources and those learning opportunities that we want all the other children have, but they can't possibly get. It's a shame, really. I wish we could give the internet to everybody. I really do.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying there, and my heart does go out to those families who have got 3 or 4 children, or 2 children and 2 adults and 1 device, and trying to timetable that along with the time taken whilst maybe being furloughed or not furloughed, plus the pressure of looking after your children. It is a very, very challenging time for teachers and for the students. I'm just thinking of moving the clock forward and thinking, right, September comes. Are you planning to have a curriculum that you can deliver in school and then immediately flip it to one that you can send out to pupils who may be self-isolating, or for groups of children that have to self-isolate if there's a designated case that pops up or something? So I'm just thinking about what are you thinking? Because this time of year, normally it's sorting out your classroom, getting your class list ready for next year, getting that assessment data to be handed up to the next teacher, and all that's kind of gone because we don't know what's going to happen. But I know schools do have to put in place these plans. So I'm just wondering what a Washacre are thinking about September, and what are other schools, because I'm guessing most of us are educationalists. If you want to put what you're planning to do in the chat, that'll give us a feel for how other colleagues are struggling throughout the country.
I think for us, we're going to possibly continue with the amazing progress that we've made in terms of what we do with LBQ and what we do with Seesaw, and that is just going to be embedded in our everyday teaching and learning. Like I said, with Seesaw as well, there is the option for, you don't just set tasks on Seesaw, you can actually provide feedback, you can actually mark the work and give them digital stickers and that kind of thing. So we will continue with that, especially if we're going to go down the route of in September, we don't know what it's going to look like. Will we still be able to mark the books? So by setting our work on Seesaw and marking it that way and providing feedback that way and doing it through LBQ, that is a journey that we're going to continue with, and we're going to continue developing. Where I see it going for Washacre is continually creating teaching resources. So getting the teachers confident enough to be able to make a teaching video that can be hosted, whether it be on Teams, whether it be on Seesaw, that then the children, if they're in school, they've got it in school and they can keep coming back to it. So if you're doing an LBQ task, and you forget what you're doing, you can quickly stop that, go back to Seesaw, watch the teaching video, come back to the LBQ task. Or if a child is self-isolating, that child can still pick up what is happening in the classroom and carry on with the learning, because that's kind of where we're at now with our LBQ and our blended learning. That's where we're at now. We are creating teaching resources, and then we're going to always have those teaching resources. And if a parent's not feeling confident to support the child, they can refer to those teaching resources, the videos. It will upskill we hope it will upskill the parents if they need it. We've always got a bank of teaching resources that we can use and we can refer back to, and the children have it at their grasps all the time. And I think that's going to be incredibly powerful for the children to have that. So it isn't just the teacher standing in front of the classroom doing that direct teaching. You've now got all that other incidental learning going on. And well, that's incredibly powerful. And again, you're not teaching for with your ability groupings as well, you're not thinking, well, I'm not preempting what they might come unstuck with. I'm creating that video, so the teaching video, those who can fly, well, off they go. Those who need to be held back will be held back and can keep referring to those teaching videos. But that doesn't necessarily always happen in the classroom, does it? So I think the blended learning approach is definitely going to make teaching and learning evolve in an incredibly powerful way. And I'm hoping here at Washacre, we can continue with that journey, continue with that process. Deb?
I know I've really started to sort of look at how they can use the class teams to set assignments, to set the rubric up to help sort of what's expected of them, and likewise handing in and marking and doing all of that sort of sort of teaching and support and marking using teams. Some schools are doing live lessons. So again, that actually, you get the teacher's voice, you see the teacher's face, which the feedback's been really powerful, that the children have really sort of engaged with the lessons that way from seeing live lessons. But then also if they missed the live lessons, they've often recorded the lesson. So if, that child wasn't able to get onto that device, they've not missed the whole aspect. They've still seen their teacher doing the lesson because they've recorded the lesson and shared that with the class. So we see that going forward for September. If not everybody's in, everybody could still access the learning that's going on. And if there's spikes or classes have to, go home, self-isolate or whatever the case may be, we do feel we've got quite a robust system in place to support teachers and schools and learning, that there should be as little barrier as possible around. We've sort of got a plan, we think.
Yeah, Deb and Cherise, it sounds like what you're doing is beyond what would normally be expected of a teacher, and we're really focusing upon the children and thinking about the parents. Molly's asked a really good question. She says that her barrier has been a lack of parental engagement. Have you got any advice on how we get parents on board? And I know some people put in chat about trying to get the parents into school, but obviously if we're in lockdown again, which there's a good chance it's going to happen somewhere, how do we engage those parents as well? Have you got any thoughts you want to share on that, please?
I know at St Osmond's and Andrews, they sort of, I think they took she said we took nearly 3 to 4 weeks of actually somebody being in the office available, which as a drop-in, as in feel free to bring your device to school. We'll safely, socially distance and have a look at it and check it out and go through the problems. And I think they were sort of really adamant, and this is sort of one of my mantras, that there's no question that's a daft question. You know what I mean? If you don't know the answer, you just don't know. It doesn't matter. But if they just really were very open to parents to say, come in, bring your device, we'll help you. And then if not, we can offer you a solution type of thing. In their case, they actually offered, a device, and several schools, as I say, have done that. But it was very much of, once that started, once parents knew there wasn't a problem, and then the children were getting on, then word of mouth. You know what children are like. If the children are suddenly talking to each other, and then the children are the people that sort of spur that on as well, that often get the parents involved, because the children are pecking their heads at it as well. So that's worked in quite a lot of our schools, of having that open time as a member of staff to say, every afternoon there'll be somebody in the office to help you get on.
That's brilliant support, Deb. Thanks for that. Nick Beach has got a great...
Pat, can I just say one thing about that with parental engagement? One of the things that we've done at Washacre as well is we have an online, like a virtual assembly. So every week, one of the teachers, picks a child that's done particularly great work, whatever. And we said, just like we would do in a normal assembly, we absolutely celebrate what's been happening for the children online. I think that's been really... quite key to engaging the parents. And then through Seesaw as well, we can direct message, and it's all safe and secure, but we can actually direct message parents, so we can offer support. And if I've got a particular child, I've got one child whose English is a really big barrier for them. The parent has been quite prolific in communicating with me, asking me for help and how can they help their child. And because of the Seesaw platform, I'm then able to have that communication with the parent. Again, it's all above board and, it's all monitored and what have you. But I can then signpost them to different resources to help that particular child. And I think having that communication, that open communication, is absolutely vital, because if the school is maybe closed, the school building may be closed, but school is not closed. The teachers are not closed. The teachers are still there. And I think a lot of our parents, a lot of our teachers have gone above and beyond, and we've worked outside of our school hours. And I think the parents have really appreciated that, because it is unprecedented times. It is really, really hard for them to get the children. And what I love about Seesaw is I can send a child, and I'm thinking of one boy in particular who just would not do his work for his mom. I sent him a personal voice message and I spoke to him directly. And because I was able to do that, he then came back on and completed some of his online learning. And, that's quite powerful for children. Another thing we do as well is we've started creating little videos for parents to show them how to use the different resources that we have. And I think that's key. If you involve them in this whole learning journey, they are going to, not all of them, but the majority are going to come on that journey with you. And, if you make it be open and honest, and we are learning just as much as you are, this is strange and different for all of us. I think they appreciate that open communication.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. And I think we've all been learning. Obviously, our company, LBQ, is a cloud-based solution. We used to go to schools and train people, and we've had to learn to do virtual meetings like this. So I think teachers, pupils, parents, it's been a very steep learning curve, definitely. I think there's a bit of discussion on the chat line about how you have this ability for each other, for pupils to be able to comment on each other's work. I think someone thinks it's done on Microsoft Teams, but I think you use Seesaw for that, don't you, Cherise?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if it's something that we can maybe set up another time. I'm more than happy to demonstrate how I kind of use Seesaw and LBQ together, but you can set it so that one child can see their own piece of work, or you can set it that the children can see, another child's piece of work. So, for example, I will set I will see the LBQ session. I can see a group of children are really struggling on question 28 or 29, whatever. I can take a screenshot of that question and I can post it to a certain group of children. And what I've asked them to do now in lockdown, which I think is incredibly powerful, because now I'm creating a classroom of learners and a classroom of teachers, is then I will say to them, right, Alfie, I want you to go on and create a maths video. And there's a child in year 3, Annie. She's been absolutely amazing. She created a maths video for me from an LBQ session. And what I'll do is if I put it I'll send it out on a tweet, an example of what this looks like. And then, so you can either make it private or you can send it to open. And then the other children can see that teaching video that child has created. So it's no longer the teacher being the teacher, the children are being teachers as well. And then you can hear the misconceptions or the learning that's gone on, and you're not setting a ceiling on the children's learning ability. It's just unbelievably incredible. So yeah, that's how I do it at Washacre. That's how we do it at Washacre, because like I said, the teachers have been on this journey with me. They've learnt very quickly how to do this kind of thing as well. But that might be something we set up.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Cherise. I think there's more than one person on here would like a webinar, probably with you in it. Definitely not me, on how to use Seesaw with your pupils and enable that. If you'd like that as a webinar, can you just type yes in the chat box, just to get a gauge of whether people are interested in that, and we'll try and arrange one.
I cannot stress between LBQ and Seesaw, our learning journey, and I'm not getting paid by either, just to make that clear. I'm so passionate with how this has worked for our children at Washacre, and the journey that we are on now, and I'm so excited about where we're going to go with this. I am so passionate about it because it works. It works for the children.
Right.
That comes across.
Yeah, I think you've just taken one step forward with the volunteering there, Cherise.
Right, okay.
So maybe we'll try and get it in before, probably towards the end of the term, maybe next week or the week after. Do you break up next week, Cherise?
Yes, we do. Next Thursday, I think it is. Yeah, next Thursday.
Right. Is there any love in the teaching world for a webinar during the holidays on it, or is it a case of you're going to go to the campsite that's open, or will you still be?
I'm more than happy to do it whenever.
Okay, well, we'll try and book one in then. It might be during the day rather than at night time if it's summer holidays. And thank you very much for that. I'm conscious of time, and it's 25 to 8. We normally run these for about 15 minutes. Usually.
Sorry.
No, not at all. All of this is educational gold. I think everyone's really, really happy that you've shared all the wonderful ideas that you and your children and obviously Deb at Bolton SICT do. So I'd just like to thank you. Anybody else got any questions they want to ask that haven't been covered? I'll happily sit and chat forever, but I'm conscious that, not everyone's as much an educational geek and not a teacher as me. I know Dave's on the chat line, he is. Joe's passion's rubbed off, brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing, it's been really useful. Yeah, I don't know how you do it, especially if you've got kids as well. My daughter's a teacher and she struggles to look after a 2.5-year-old and do the teaching part. I've got staff members who are trying to do this during the day whilst having children running around whilst trying to educate them. It has been a very, very challenging and innovative way. But the one thing that you came up with, Cherise, was, which I really like to hear, you said there's no expectation of what a child can and can't do when we do this remote blended learning. And if there's something that comes out of this lockdown, it's maybe we kind of reassess how we evaluate the children. There's not that same preconception ideas that we have because we can't always see them. And perhaps we set work and they can actually do better than we think. I don't know. Yeah. So
I think especially because we don't have the time constraints either. When you've got an hour lesson, a child working slowly doesn't necessarily mean a child can't do it. And if they've got more time to do it, they are definitely much more successful and they can have those repeated times, attempts at a certain question or whatever. And that's been gold, absolute gold.
Yeah, I massively agree with you on that. Just because a child takes longer doesn't mean to say they can't do it. Yeah, fantastic. That's one joyful nugget. Someone's talking about going to a pub or on holiday. Yeah, I'm not going in a pub for a long time still. I'm too scared. And holidays, well, that's just forget it, isn't it? I'm looking out the window today. It's pouring down with rain in Blackpool. Yeah. So much for English summer. Do you have any more questions at all? Anything else anybody wants to ask before we say thank you very much? If you want to talk more, Deb, if you've got more to say, Cherise, I don't have to cut you off. You can carry on talking if you want.
I'm sure people have got loads of other things that they
can
do.
Right. What you need to know about me is that I will go on and on and on and on all night. I can talk to the cows come home about LBQ and Seesaw.
I'm just looking at my big long list of questions and I'm trying to think of, is there anything that you haven't covered on here? The only thing I'd say we didn't touch on is how hard has it been for other colleagues? Perhaps for those who aren't as skilled up with ICT. Have you tried to engage with them or tried to help them, or what's the school done?
I know I was going to say from our point of view, because of the training that we've always done, that sort of aspect of there's no daft question. And I know some of our Bolton teachers are on here tonight and I'm saying, ask the question, because if you've not already, I've probably already asked it to our technical people. So you know what I mean? And I think we've just got to be, not everybody, there is that teacher that, I don't do IT or I don't use technology or it never works. I think we've just got to sort of say, look at the engagement, look at the results that you can get from your children, though. You've just got to put your fears to the back of that really, and sort of, I know the colleagues, and I know particularly like at Washacre and many of our Bolton schools, that, the support for each other has been amazing. Has been absolutely amazing. I think all teachers up and down the country have been doing an amazing job of supporting each other and supporting it, the families out there. And I think it's just them being really, really open to sort of knowing that this technology is not going to go away. Yeah. And it's now made them think about their teaching in a different way. Because when we didn't have to do it, you didn't have to do it really. But now in a way, we've sort of had to do it and get our head in gear. And I think that's been quite a scary point, but actually really enjoying the feedback I got from some of the teachers has been, oh my goodness, I never thought I'd be able to do that. And I've just done a live lesson and the kids were brilliant. And you can hear the excitement in the staff. But if I'd have asked them to do that even 2 weeks ago, you've got to be joking, not a chance, Debs. Well, actually, the messages we're getting through is going, cheers, thanks for that. It's been fab. So, yeah, I think there's no doubt.
And just with exactly the same with children, you've got your teachers as well who are not as confident. So why not do a private, you can do a live lesson with the teachers, or even one step better, you do a screen recording, create your own little walkthrough of this is what you can do and this is how you do this and this is how you do that. You save it to OneDrive or Google Drive or whichever drive that you use. And that teacher who's not feeling as confident has always got that resource to resort back to, always got that resource to look at, and doesn't feel like, oh, I'm the one who's always asking the dumb question, or I'm always the one who's, not as able as everybody else. Those resources are there, just like you have got for your teaching resources. It's the same thing with the teachers. Create the resources, keep them forever. That's
why we did all the videos on the Learning Hub, because you can be trained on it in one session and then you go away and it's like, oh, what did she say about that? And the videos, just having the videos as reference of going, here, that's how you do it. It's just there. I know the videos we've done have had great feedback from all the staff and families as well. I think video is the way, and it's just that.
Yeah.
I'm a rubbish reader of instructions, but give me a video, I can stop and have a look, or just spin forward because I've got fed up because I have the attention span of a gnat. I think video just works for me. It's how I learn. We're laughing at that.
I think before lockdown, when I was a teacher, before I left and joined LBQ, you tended to work in your classroom. We were a 3-form entry school, and perhaps the teachers might have shared in that 3-form in that year group. But you very rarely got to find out what happened in year 1 and year 2 for teaching. You're a bit of a silo mentality, and maybe this lockdown has given us the opportunity to share more. And like you say, Cherise, by doing a video and sticking it on your Google Shared Drive or whatever platform that your school uses. Alan wants to ask a question, and he's saying, do I just unmute and dive in? Alan, do you want to fire away and ask your question?
Yes, please. Hello, Cherise. Hello, Deb.
Hi,
Alan.
I'm curious about something. I don't know if it's come across in what you've been doing so far, but just thinking forward to September, when you probably have lots of children back in school, let's fingers crossed, but you may have some in bubbles, you may have some still at home for whatever reason. As a teacher, do you see the need to, I know you can deal with those two separately, you can deal with the classroom and you can deal with the children by sending out the code and they could log in and do the activity whenever, but do you see any advantage or need to run a lesson at a certain time and have the children at home join in with those in the class all together, sort of thing? So you're doing some instruction and then they're all running the activity together. Would that?
I know I've got schools that do that. They sort of send out tweets each week, or sort of like on a Monday, Wednesday, and sort of say, right, year 5s, this is your live lesson timetable. So they might say at 9:30 you've got maths, and at 1 o'clock you've got English or whatever. And then so they'll do a mix of live lessons that children, if they are at home, can log into and access the live lesson. And it's the same lesson that the teacher's doing in class as they're actually watching there and then. Because we don't want to actually say you've got to do the lesson twice. That's definitely not what we do. Doing it once is enough. So quite a lot of our schools that are using Teams and all of that sort of stuff is really sort of sending out the details as to say, these will be when the live lesson slots are, and giving parents and families the notification, so then they know that where possible, that child needs the laptop for that time. It is all about balancing, the devices that are available, but I know schools are doing that as well.
Okay, yeah, because I was thinking on one hand, it helps the children who are distant to feel part of the group again, if you like, and also it might save the teacher some work in not having to deal with them two time distance apart from each other, sort of thing. But
we've also had I was speaking to a member of staff the other day who was actually self-isolating, but actually teaching She was not because of her health, but because of somebody else in their family setting. And she said it was really nice to actually deliver a lesson as she felt like she was part of the school. Yeah. Whereas, you know, it's that bit because she wasn't in that school mayhem of day-to-day stuff that's been going on. She actually felt that she was still playing her part, being able to teach her children, even though she was sat at home. So I thought that was really powerful. As it was like we're expecting all the teaching to be done at school, but actually she taught from her house to, you know, because she's not been in that school environment at all. So I thought that was quite powerful as well.
Thank you. And again, the same could apply. You could have more than one bubble in the same school.
Yeah.
And you want to join those together with one teacher, or a teacher working with a teaching assistant, perhaps.
Yeah. I think using technology, there's just
absolutely.
It's really up to you as to what fits for you and for your children and for your teachers and for your school setting.